Hello friend, my name is Raza Masood. Today we will discuss about a topic adaptation in Scrum. This is a very common term normally used in Scrum methodology, and whenever we are using Agile or a Scrum framework to implement a project, this terminology is most oftenly used. So we will discuss this topic, this term adaptation, and what does that mean, adaptation in Scrum, and how we can use it. So today we will discuss this topic in detail. So first of all, I would request to please subscribe to my channel and click on the bell option as well. So let's start. What is adaptation in Scrum? Friend, just consider this term adaptation before going in detail. Adaptation means to adopt something, to adopt some way, to adopt some process, to adopt some improvement. For example, in general meaning, in very general meaning, if you are going somewhere, for example, from one position, one location to another location, you are going somewhere, and in the middle of a way you realize that you are not on the right track, and someone tells you that if you go on the right side, so it will be a right track and you can reach to your destination, and you adopt that way. You decided to go on that way which tells you, with the person who told you that this is the right way, this is the right track, and after discussing with him you realize that this is the right track, and then you adopt that way. So this is called adaptation. You are getting my point? Adaptation means to adopt something, to uh, to recognize something, to follow something, to accept something. This is a very general concept of adaptation. Now, coming towards more specific to the terms adaptation in Scrum. Friend, whenever an inspector, someone who is inspecting the process or inspecting the product, whenever he realized that the product is not going well, it's not fulfilling the requirement, it will not complete on time, it's not up to the quality marks, it's not up to the customer standards, it's not up to the as per the scope defined by customer. So whenever an inspector or some person realized, he has to raise his voice, he has to discuss with the stakeholder, and after proper inspection, the corrective action or the major corrective action would be taken to get back on track the things. We do some necessary changes in the process, we do some necessary changes in the product, so that we can get back on the track. And the purpose of that changes is to further minimize the changes or further deviation from the process. If you find that you are not following the best practices or the as per the Scrum body of knowledge, the stakeholders, the core team can raise their voice, Scrum master can raise their voice, so that they can stop their self to deviate from the process. The purpose of all these discussion or raising their voice is to get back on track, fulfill the requirement of customer, fulfill the quality of a product, and stop themselves to deviate from the process. All the purpose of the raising their voice is to fulfill, is to get back on track and get fulfill the requirement of customer and the successful delivery of a project. The purpose of the adaptation means, first of all, you will analyze, you will inspect the process. If there is any deviation, if there is any deficiency in the product, any deviation from the process, you will highlight it and discuss it, and after proper acceptance from the stakeholder, you will do necessary changes or necessary changes in the process or product if, as per necessary, and to minimize the deviation from the process. This is called as adaptation. What does that mean? Adaptation is basically based on inspection. After inspection, you realize that there are some deviation from as per the accepted criteria, as per the expected results. If there is any deviation found, so you have to make some changes as per the agreed criteria, so that you can get back on track, and you have to minimize the as soon as possible, as much as possible, the deviation from the process. So this is called the main concept of adaptation. I hope you understood my point, what I would like to explain to you. Friend, adaptation happens as the Scrum core team and stakeholders learn through transparency and inspection, and then adopt by making improvements in the work they are doing. Okay, it basically based on inspection, transparency, and then making improvements, so that they can get back on track, so that they can minimize as much as possible the deviation from the process, and get the desired result, and get the successful delivery of a project. Now we will see the events for inspection and adaptation in the Scrum. First of all, the main event is daily stand-up meeting. In daily stand-up meeting, core team, the Scrum Master or product owner, they are discussing what they have done yesterday, what they are doing today, what they will do tomorrow. So in the stand-up meeting, at around 15 to 30 minutes, they will discuss the routine things, their daily tasks, and what they have done yesterday, what they are doing today, what they will do tomorrow. And in that, if they found any deviation, if they are discussing with the stakeholders and they found any deviation, so they can highlight it. And the purpose of highlighting that risk or that deviation is to make some improvement, to minimize the deviation from the expected result, or deviation from the process. Second one is the constant risk identification. As a Scrum Master or product owner, if or any core team, if you found any risk, so you can identify it, you can highlight it, you can document it somewhere, and you can escalate it to the senior management if necessary. The purpose of risk identification is that rather it becomes an issue at some later stage, we should highlight it. If you found that the team, we don't have the proper training is available for the team, so rather to wait some 2 or 3 months, it's better to highlight at this stage that the required training is not provided to the vendor or to the developers, so it could be a big issue at some later stage. So after whenever we do the risk identification, it also become a very big or very important event to inspect and adaptation. Whenever we are highlighting the risk, we are basically inspecting the things, and if there is any deviation recorded, if there is any improvement needed, so that on based on the risk identification, we can do the improvement in the process, or improvement in the product if it's necessary. So similarly, change request, if any change request came from customer, or product owner has to accept it. So whenever we are recording that change, so while recording the change request, you can also found that if we do this change at some early stage, it was better. Or you can realize by yourself that it's better to accept, to realize the importance of that change, so that at some later stage we can avoid some these types of changes at some later stage. So change request is also a event through which we can learn the adaptation, so that we can avoid the further changes at some later stage. A Scrum guidance body, like SBOK, a Scrum body of knowledge, is basically a guidance which is basically devised by Scrum body of knowledge. It's a book, it's a guideline for Scrum methodology, how we can use the Scrum framework. It also describe you that how we should use the Scrum framework, how we define the user stories, what is the role of a Scrum master, what is the role of a product owner, what is the role of core team. So it's a very detailed book. So by using the Scrum body of knowledge, Scrum guidelines, you can the core team or any other stakeholder can identify any deviation from the process, or deviation if product owner, if for example a Scrum master is doing something and it's against the definition or guidelines of the Scrum body of knowledge, so any stakeholder can raise his voice that the activities which are basically performing by the Scrum master, it is not as per their role, and this is a deviation from the process. So Scrum guidance body can help you to identify the deviation from process or any improvement if it's needed. Retrospect sprint meeting. Friend, retrospect sprint meeting is basically event which occurs at whenever we showcase the deliverable to the customer, and when after getting the response from him. So retrospect means that we will see that whatever goes wrong, whatever goes right. So during that meeting, after when we are retrospecting the things, where during that meeting we realize that if there is any after inspection we realize that if any improvement is needed, it's a very important meeting. If there is any improvement needed in the process, in the product, in the deliverable, in the task, so we can discuss it and highlight it, and if it's required, if all the team members agreed and the core team agreed, so we should adopt that improvement to our process, to our procedure, to our product, to our deliverables, so that we can deliver a good product, a good quality product to our customer. In the last retrospect project meeting, retrospect project meeting is basically a meeting in which we basically discuss the things, we discuss the deliverable, score team discuss the different tasks deliverable, that how we can improve the process, what are the methodologies, what are the process through way, what are the things, what are the improvement which we can make to improve the process, to improve the deliverable. So this is called a retrospect project meeting. These are project meeting pertains to the deliverable, in which core team, Scrum master, product owner, they are basically discussing the deliverable, and they are trying to identify if there is any improvement required in the process, in the deliverable, so that they can agreed upon and they can adopt it. If they agreed that this is the good thing, this is the necessary thing which you should adopt, so they can adopt, they can accept that improvement and make a part of that process. In the last, friend, I would tell you one very important point here, that the Scrum is totally different approach as per the Waterfall. Because see, in the Waterfall what happens that we develop the whole module, the whole product, and then we deliver it to the customer at a very later stage, and then at a very later stage, if there is any bad thing happens or customer didn't agree with us, so it's a big huge failure for us, because at a very later stage we get the feedback from customer, or we realize that there were some major improvements were needed, but it was not realized, it was realized at a very later stage, and lots of rework of or lots of hassle would be required to cover up the things, because we get the inspection or adaptation was occur at a very later stage. The customer feedback was received at a very later stage, and now things are becoming out of our hand, because there is lots of rework is required. If we deliver a product which is totally out of expectation of customer, why? Because the inspection or adaptation inspection was occur at a very later stage in a Waterfall. It's a very big drawback of Waterfall. On the other hand, if we talk about the Scrum methodology, In the Scrum, see that on daily meetings, on daily stand-up meetings and risk identification, retrospective meetings, etc. So at a very early stage, if there is any deviation, if there is any loophole, if there is any differences between our understanding and customer expectation, it arises at a very early stage of a project. You, as a vendor, you have very big chances, good chances that with very minimum effort or very minimum rework, you can cover up the things and you can get back on track at a very early stage. Because after 3 to 4 weeks, whenever you showcase your deliverable, whenever you showcase the product to your customer, and if he gives feedback, any negative feedback, any difference with your product, so you realize it very early stage. Similarly, if the things are not going well, it will definitely arise in the stand up meetings, in the planning meetings, in the retrospective meetings. So because things will arrive at a very early stage, if there is any deviation, so there are very high chances that you can cover up the things at a very early stage, which is very different to waterfall. In the waterfall, the feedback or differences of opinion arise at a very later stage, so it's very difficult to cover up the thing in waterfall model. However, it's more easier, or you can say there are high chances to cover up the things in Scrum methodology, because you get the feedback of customer, you inspect the things at very early stage, you adopt the methodology or improvements at a very early stage if it's necessary. So it's you can say there are high chances that you can cover up the thing, you can deliver a good product with less minimum rework to customer in Scrum, because you are getting the feedback of customer, you are expecting the things on regularly in Scrum. So friend, thanks a lot for your time. I have tried my level best to give you the concept of adaptation in a Scrum. Remember one thing: adaptation always based on inspection and transparency. Based on the inspection and transparency, if there is any improvement required in the process, to stop the deviation from the process, we must have to adopt. Adaptation means to accept the things, accept from inside, from your mind. Accept the things, accept if there is any improvement needed, you must have to accept it. So friend, thanks a lot for your time. I'm thankful that you have watched my video, and that's all from my side. Please subscribe to my channel and also share it with your friend and colleagues, and please like this video. So thank you, thanks a lot for your time.